Hello and welcome back to Disco. Oh, this is not Discovering SCP, this is Aetheral Space. Welcome back to Aetheral Space 8.9. Needle Point. We are back.
Needle Point. Not to be confused with the Needle Set, which was only used in the Pokemon offshoot game that we played.
I was so scared then. I thought I came up with a armor set for Ruth and then forgot about it. I thought you were about to expose me.
You have to make it Needle Set. Last time on Aetheral Space, we had a really good chapter where Tanhony let down his author walls and actually revealed a little bit of the story to us. We learned a bit more of the details around Dragon's backstory. We found that his mother basically forced him to help fix with criminal activity in exchange for money. She used that money to buy Bubble, and she was very abusive, and at one point tried to kill him until something stopped her, presumably Mr. Fix. We also learned that Panacea, is somewhat sentient and knows that it's being hurt, and that there have been branches of Panacea that are getting angry and trying to fight back. And we also learned a little Easter egg, if you are Chad, he's been paying attention. In Arc 3, if you remember, Noelle, when she had the Panacea, saw a little girl in a dress for a second, or she thought it was a dress. And we can deduce that that was Pan. So, will Pan stay in Dragon forever? Will they become like a symbiote, have some sort of symbiotic relationship? Is she going to go bye-bye? What's going to happen next? Who knows? We also know Marie managed to convince Asaya to spare her friends. I think that's everything. Did I forget anything? I might have forgotten something. Okay, perfect. Without further ado, let's get reading, gamers. Dragon gulped as he looked up at the monolithic building, his eyes scanning the exterior for potential points of entry. Sure enough, the only way in seemed to be the massive sealed doors right in front of him. He crossed his arms as he tapped his foot, tossing the possibilities over in his mind. "Why not go in, dead boy?" Pan asked, floating a few meters up as if she was standing on thin air. It seemed now that the cat was out of the bag. Not the car, silly. There wasn't much point in pretending to obey the laws of physics. I'll fix that for you. It's okay. Dragon bit his lip. "The door's locked," he said. "I can't go in." Pan raised a finger in the air as if she was educating him. "When door is locked, you knock on it, dead boy. Then it opens. Easy peasy." "I'm a dead person walking around in the middle of what's basically a zombie apocalypse." Dragon rolled his eyes. "I'll be lucky if they don't just blow my head off again." Pan cocked her own head. "Again, dead boy?" Dragon looked up at her, and he gulped again, as if speaking the words would make them real. "That's what happened, right? I got shot in the skull, then I wake up with you in my head. Doesn't take a genius to work out I didn't just tank the hit." Pan nodded eagerly. "Saved you, dead boy. So you live, boy, now. No problem. Go knock, okay?" "What?" Dragon snorted. "Sorry for the scare, everyone. I actually ended up getting resurrected by the mind of the Panacea on the planet. So we're all good now? Do you really think they'll buy it?" Pan frowned. "That's what happened, dead boy." "Yeah, but they won't believe that. They'll think I'm lying." "So you sleep out here, then?" Dragon looked around. With the darkness of the night and the shadow of the building, his surroundings were nearly imperceptible. If he tried to climb down under these circumstances, there was a good chance he'd just fall off again. Not to mention the repurpose that would no doubt be lurking about if he wandered off. "No," he sighed. "That's not really an option either." "Then why not knock, fucko? No other option?" Dragon sighed again, heavier. He'd never really thought about what it would be like to talk to a mushroom, but he hadn't imagined it would be so very frustrating. Still, she wasn't exactly wrong. Just have the Archivist befriend her forehead. He took in a deep breath, raised his fist up, and, pouring his aether through it, knocked. So I have a question.
Yes.
So, the way Pan worded it is she saved him and made it work.
Yeah.
So, my question is, I thought the whole thing was, she was being used as medicine against her will, right? So, why doesn't the Panacea that gets chopped off just, not fix people?
Well, that's what it does. It's a biological fact of it. It's not...
So she didn't, really will it. It just, kind of happened as the...
She can will the Panacea to move about a little bit, so she moved that about. And then it just does what it
does.
does.
I see. I see what you're saying. Okay. Isaya's growl was dark and deep enough that the air around him vibrated in sympathy. Even Marie, standing before him in the lab, couldn't help but shudder. Sorry. I just realized, is that why when Jurgan gets hurt, sorry for interrupting again, when he gets hurt, his injury like heals right instantly, and with other people like is all floundering around? Is that just because he has like sentient panacea in him, or is that like Panacea's way of resisting? Okay. To think they'd go so far, he snarled, turning the holographic display. To think they'd plunge to such depths. Unforgivable. Unforgivable! At Hasai's insistence, Marie had allowed him to take a scan of her body, more specifically of the restraining devices the Supremacy had placed inside her. The needles, they were called. The cross-section of one of her arms, and of the needle that rested within it, was what had inspired such rage and such anger in Hasaya. Small, he muttered, eyes on stalks growing to inspect the hologram from every angle. Only large enough to contain the mechanisms and the necessary payload, and yet dangerously fragile. Clever, even I must admit. I assume they've made you aware of the activation conditions? Marie nodded, stepping off the scanning module. If I try to destroy or interfere with the needles, they automatically activate. If I try and remove one of them, they activate. If I try and split off a separate organism without one of them in it, they activate. They're pretty foolproof. Her words were well rehearsed. They encompassed the rules her life had been preserved by for so long, after all. Messiah snorted, his attention firmly on the hologram. Of course. A cell is only effective if you know where the bars are. And I'm sure they told you what exactly would be the method of your execution? Marie's body stiffened. That, too, was only too easy to recall. They said it was the venom of a gene tyrant. He nodded, each eye closing in anguish. Harvested from an esteemed carcass, no doubt. What's the venom of a gene tyrant? Didn't we learn about that before?
It's been mentioned before.
Yeah, what was it again?
Well, we're about to find out. He's about to explain.
Oh. I know it's deadly, but... Marie gulped. I don't really know that much about it. It could even kill one of us? Isaiah created... Created? Oh my god! Wait, because he's a gene tyrant. I see. Sorry, I have to get used to the lingo. Isaiah created an eyebrow and raised it. You didn't understand the magnitude, yet didn't dare rebellion. Didn't want to take my chances. Isaiah flicked the display away with a hand and stood up straight, his extended spine making him unnaturally tall, his head brushing against the ceiling. Your trepidation bothers me, but I can't deny it was well-founded. He extended one finger, delicately turned it over, and watched as slow drop after slow drop of pale green liquid dripped from it. When it struck the ground, it steamed, persisting for but a moment before dissipating away. A long time ago, he whispered morosely, it was thought this was the only thing capable of killing us. The uprisings taught us otherwise, of course. They were so very creative with their work. Still, very effective. Why? Isaiah sighed, two hands clasped behind his back as two others planted themselves against the ceiling, pushing him down into a hunch. Poisons are almost invariably useless against us. Our bodies can adapt against any malady, change to accommodate any foreign substance. That's something I've been reminded of fairly recently. However, the venom of a gene tyrant. He gingerly took a step back as a cleaning automatic zoomed through, thoroughly scrubbing up the spot where the venom had dripped. The venom of a gene tyrant, he sniffed, is capable of adapting just as a gene tyrant is. No matter what you are, no matter how long you manage to delay it, the venom will kill you. It was considered a very great crime to use it against one of your own back in the day. Marie took a deep breath. So basically, I set off one of the needles, I'm fucked, right? Isaiah nodded. Yes, quite fucked. So, what do we do? With a sigh, Isaiah tapped some buttons on his wrist-bound script, and the floor tile below him raised up to become a seat. He sat down, chin in his myriad hands. It's a long-term problem, to be sure, he murmured. Once the great rectification begins, if the Supremacy discovers you're working with me, they'll no doubt activate the devices immediately. Never said I was working with you, but okay. I'll put some thought into it, he said. Perhaps if we manage to remove or destroy all of the devices in the very same instant. Then again, if we were off by even a second, it would mean your death. A problem for another day. We cannot be hasty. Why don't you just do, because gene tyrants can, recover pretty easily, right? Mm-hmm. You find, here's my gene tyrant solution, Tan. You find where each needle is on the body. You splay yourself out on a body table, right? Or whatever it's called. You find each needle, and then you put a hydraulic press above each spot, and then you just slam it down really fast and hard.
Well, then the poison will come out.
But he said destroy them all at the same time. It would work. That's what he said.
If you crush it, though, it's just gonna squeeze out like orange juice.
Then how would he destroy it?
Well, he would have to think of another way.
Wait a minute.
That's why it's an issue.
She said, if you try to separate a part of your body without the needle, you get in trouble. So you can separate a part of your body with the needle, correct?
Yeah, that's what happened in Arc 6 when there was 2 Maries.
So here's what you do. Separate your body into a bunch of pieces, because you only need a little bit to regen, and put a needle in each one, and then leave just one left in your main body. Then destroy the one in your main body, and let the other pieces you cut off die off, and then you can just regain the biomass later.
But why would you be willing to do that? Because that'd be like killing yourself 4 times. It'll give me 4 versions of you experiencing death.
You don't have to give each person sentience, do you?
Well, not necessarily, but...
Can't you just do, like, Migi hands? Like little Migi servants, and then just crush them? And then just let them die off?
That's in you, that's still gonna kill you.
No. Not if you destroy it. Just scoop it out with an ice cream scoop.
You try and remove it, like, it's gonna go off. That's the problem.
No. Okay, so you said you can't remove it, but you can put it in a piece that you chop off from your main body.
You could.
So just put all of them on different bodies and then kill them. And then the main mass eats biomass. Problem solved.
We'll find out more about this.
I have beaten Tan's system. By his own admission. He made Gene Tyrants too OP. I think what you should...
fit in this, into the rules of it. If you...
Alright.
Okay, yeah, never mind. Well, that would count then as... No, that would still count as splitting off a part of you without a needle in it, if you split all the needles off yourself.
Okay, split all but one off of you,
okay.
Right? And then you just have to find a way to destroy the one.
Well,
scoop it out with a big ice cream scoop in one go. You just, like, carve into her arm or whatever the last one's at.
Literally instant.
I believe there are Aether users that could pull it off. I believe the Abyss Knight could pull it off. I believe Wu Ming could pull it off. Oh. I believe Muzazi, after the power of friendship, could maybe pull it off.
We will find out more. Well, that's the issue. Is getting
All right. Aetheral Spaces, write down your solution to this problem in the comments below. Sorry for halting the reading for this. I just wanted to see if I could outsmart him. Silence settled over the room, and Marie found for a moment that her hands were shaking, before she adjusted her nervous system to stop that, of course. Again, it didn't take a genius to figure out why. All they'd discussed to this point were practical matters. Names, Hasaya's plan, her own circumstances. But she found her heart yearning for an emotional connection with this being, the only other one of her kind in the universe. "If you don't mind me asking," she began quietly, "how did you survive?" He glanced up at her. "Survive? 1,000 revolutions, I mean. I never really got how anyone would have, made it through all that. The stories, the history, it all seems pretty total, She was stumbling over her words. That was pretty unusual for her, but this was a pretty unusual situation. When she first came into existence, she'd been kneeling in a puddle of blood in some alleyway. Whether that blood belonged to her or someone else, she never found out. All she knew was the basics of how to operate as a human. How to breathe, how to talk, how to walk. She had all the intellect of a normal human, just without any memory to speak of. Everything she'd gotten since then, she'd taken with her own 2 hands. Did she still remember how to... Yeah, Alright, you wrote how to talk. I was curious if she knew how to speak. All her predecessor had truly left her, if anything, was the cold tears on her cheeks when she'd first come to awareness. "The 1,000 revolutions," Hasaya growled darkly, adjusting his position on his seat. "That's their name for it, isn't it? As if it were something so noble and proud. Was it glorious when the Umbrans steered Olga's yacht into a star? Was it such a great victory when they turned the surface of progress's march to glass? Atrocities, each and every." He really seemed to like ranting about that. Spittle was nearly flying out of his mouth by the end, but he hadn't actually gotten close to answering her question. Was he deliberately avoiding the question, or was it just that much of a sore spot? Usually she'd read human body language to sense deceit, but that didn't seem to be possible with another Gene Tyrant. The shape of their body changed from instant to instant, after all. Asaya slumped over in his seat, hands clasped together and fused at the fingertips. "My survival," he murmured, finally getting to the point. "Matter of circumstance. During the waning age of our society, I found myself interested in the notion of extraterrestrial life. Despite how far humanity had expanded its borders, we'd never found any intelligent neighbors. At the time of the uprising, I was far beyond our territory. As such, I went unnoticed by the rebels. Do you think Panacea counts as an extraterrestrial?
He very well would, but he does not seem to realize this.
This is so sad. Marie raised her eyebrows in interest. So we have our first aliens of Aetheral space. Aetheral spacers. Yeah. It's fungus. Extraterrestrials? What, like aliens? Did you end up finding any? If Asaya found her segue insensitive, he didn't show it. If anything, he seemed to relax, crossing two of his legs. Disappointingly, no, he gestured vaguely. Once, I thought I had found a tribal society of intelligent reptiles, but it turned out to be an experiment of one of my fellows that they failed to report. I had the lot incinerated in the end. Before he could elaborate any further, however, there was an audible beeping from Hasaya's script. He frowned, glancing down at it, and as he did, his form seamlessly shifted back to its humanoid default. He read the screen of the script while slicking his hair back with his other hand. Interesting, he said quietly, scanning the text before him. His eyes flicked back up to Marie. You may want to look at this. A disturbance at the exterior doors. Marie went to step forward for a better look, but Hasaya cast a hologram display instead, the screen floating in front of her face. Her eyes widened. There, knocking on the huge doors of the Exocorp building with all his strength, was Dragon Hadrian, the young man who was supposedly dead. You know him? Hasaya asked, noting her reaction. She nodded. Me and my partner came looking for that person. He's a defector from the Supremacy, but he's dead. He was with that last batch of people who arrived, but he was killed before he could get in here. Had his head blown off, from what I understand. Had Del said lied to her? No, she could read the expressions of a normal human like him easily enough. Had he been mistaken, then? Asaya turned his gaze back to the script. Interesting, then. Very interesting. Could this be another manifestation of the Panacea, then? First the repurposed, then the dead hand, now this... Well, how can my scientific spirit resist? So the dead hand, I'm assuming, is like the Panacea that decided to fight back. Well, repurposed is like... Oh, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, repurposed is fight back, and so is dead hand. Dead hand are like elite repurposed, essentially.
Oh, okay. I thought the repurposed was just like mindless Panacea that was cut off from the hive mind.
No, mindless Panacea wouldn't do anything like independent at all.
Right. Now this... Well, how can my scientific spirit resist? He raised the script to his mouth. Bring it into containment, he commanded. Quietly. Oh my... SCP Foundation?
SCP-2922, Dragon Hadrian.
The repurposed. To be honest, Dragon was fairly surprised when the front doors actually opened. He'd already been looking around the exterior of the building again in the hopes of finding a vent sus, or something he could squeeze in through. It was only when Pan whooped in celebration that Dragon realized the doors were smoothly sliding open. That's actually very interesting that Pan can notice things that he doesn't. I assume like he's thinking too hard about it, and, and she's like using what his eyes see.
Exactly.
It's very interesting. The light within was blinding, but Dragon stepped forward without fear, only holding one hand up to shield his face with the glow. He realized this would take some talking, of course, but unlike nearly everything else he'd experienced since landing on this planet, that was well within his wheelhouse. Fuck! Wait! Okay, I'm gonna do it at the end. Never mind. Okay. I forgot to make you do your fun fact of the week. We'll do it at the end. Okay, he said preemptively, squinting to see. I realize this might seem like a suspicious situation, but his vision adjusted. 6 plasma rifles were pointing right at his face, wielded by 6 grim-looking security officers clad in biohazard suits. Hands in the air, their leader said, his gruff voice modulated by his rebreather, or we kill you and bring you in cold. Dragon sighed. Okay, now listen. There was a chorus of clicks as 6 safeties were flicked off. Dragon put his hands up. Fascinating, Ansem Deldayaway thought, inspecting the scene before him through his left eye. Most fascinating. This is the turtle guy, right? Yeah. I forgot what his voice was, so I'm just going to go with Y's turtle voice. His 3 personal automatics were monstrously expensive to maintain, but in situations like this, he couldn't be more grateful for them. They were as small as houseflies, capable of flying great distances, and wherever they were, they could stream video and audio directly to the optical implant in Ansem's left eye. So, even as he sat here in his tent, he could watch what was going on right outside the building. He's just doing like the spectator cam in video games.
Exactly, yeah.
The silver-haired young man behind led... The silver-haired young man behind...
Sorry.
The silver-haired young man being led inside at gunpoint was without a doubt the same one who'd been shot dead earlier that same day. Ansem had seen some strange things during his venerable lifetime, but not yet the resurrection of the dead. With a twitch of his eyebrow, he commanded the attending automatic to track that young man and keep him informed. The second of his 3 automatics was patrolling the main floor of the warehouse, carefully watching from above. Not so long ago, the man called Skipper and his compatriots had been released back into the crowd. There'd been someone else with them, too, the young man from the Supremacy, a toy Muzazi, but they'd quickly gone their separate ways. He'd be worth keeping an eye on. Skipper had rejected his initial offer, but he hadn't yet approached the toy Muzazi. The third of his automatics was still waiting to reacquire Titan Hisaya, hovering through his personal quarters. That lab in which Hisaya spent most of his time had countermeasures in place to interfere with such espionage automatics, so Ansem could do little more than speculate as to what the CEO was doing in there. Interfere. Ansem Del Dewe had come to this place to ensure the freedom of the workers being ground down. That was the principle that the Coalition of 3 had been founded upon. That's a dope name. For that purpose, he had negotiated and bargained, seeking to come to an understanding with Titan Hisaya. Hisaya, I have come to bargain. It had been fruitless. It had been fruitless. Every request had been denied without compromise, and the dead hand had been brought in to terrorize the workers into, I assume, capitulation rather than catipulation.
Exactly, I was testing you.
Okay. Thanks. I needed that for my reading comprehension. Speaking of... No, we're reading. Remind me afterwards. 3 times his automatics had injected Hisaya with deadly poison. Sorry. Well, he had thought, that's just fine too. The Coalition understood better than anyone that chains often couldn't be broken with words. 3 times his automatics had injected Hisaya with deadly poison, the sap of the weeping rose tree, a most effective method of honorable execution. Each time, there had been no effect. Hisaya hadn't even blinked. Watching the building like a spider in a turtle's form, Ansem sighed heavily. Whatever was happening here was beginning to overwhelm his understanding. Well, Dragon sighed, never wire-bound hands on his knees. At least it's not too drab in here. Oh wait, he can just pull an Elias and cut his limbs off, Smile. Then he can get out.
Yeah, with, like, his teeth.
Yeah. Bite off your arm, Dragon. Show us your resolve. The guard had brought him to some kind of quarantine cell, a sealed glass cube surrounded by bright lights, furnished only with a bench, a threadbare bed, and a pathetic-looking toilet. They'd left him in here and abandoned the room, but Dragon had no doubt he was being watched from half a dozen angles. "This is cozy, dead boy," Pan commented, sitting on the bench next to him, legs swinging through empty air. "This is your house now?" "No," Dragon replied, resting his chin on his hands. "This is more like jail, I guess." "What's jail, dead boy?" Pan asked. Her curiosity truly was insatiable. "Well, jail is where criminals go, I guess. You remember criminals?" Pan grinned widely. Yes! I remember criminals, dead boy." If only you'd never existed," his mother hissed, her hands wrapped tight around his neck. He remembered criminals, too. Dragon went to open his mouth to question Pan more as to what exactly was going on with this planet, but before he could speak, a new voice echoed throughout the room. "Having fun talking to yourself, pal?" North asked. "You're supposed to be dead, ain't ya?" Dragon nearly jumped out of his skin, swinging his head this way and that to see where the voice was coming from. He looked left, he looked right, but it was only when he looked forward again that he saw North. Brilliant. The tan skirrant was leaning casually against the glass, one gray eyebrow raised. "Been a while, huh?" he smirked. "You got a minute to talk?" That was North's voice, right? It was like meowthy. Okay. So, first thing is your fun fact. What's your fact about Aetheral Space this week?
So the Coalition of 3, it was founded after a slave rebellion from one of the empires that came up after the Gene Tyrant's fall. It's based in a system with a planet and 2 moons, hence the Coalition of 3. There's societies on each of those 3 planets. They are only a very small system inside the UAP, but they actually have like a bigger influence through their clandestine activities, like Ansem, who's a lawyer but also an assassin.
Does slavery still exist?
No, it was not anymore, but it was sort of very common after the Gene Tyrants fell for a while.
So like now they're sort of like workers' rights advocates?
Yeah.
Okay. I see. And I was going to bring up, I don't remember what it was in relation to, something about learning. I learned today, my niece showed me this game she's been playing. Did you know that how lucky kids have it for learning? Like when we were kids, a learning game was like a rabbit walks through a castle and like does problems or whatever, right? She has like a fucking learning MMO with like a whole fully voice acted story and like equipment and like attacks that like you have to do math problems or like do different stuff for. It's so cool, dude. I was like, what the hell? It was insane. It's called Prodigy, by the way. It even has a cool name.
Sounds good.
Sorry, I don't know why I thought you would be impressed by that. I thought it was cool. I guess it's not that cool. Kids have MMOs to learn. That's so dope.
Hell yes.
Yeah, that's all I had. Sorry.
Don't worry about it. You've shown me something interesting. Be sure to make use of it.
I'm gonna stop the recording now.